Welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right into a really strange human habit. Have you ever noticed how we often fight against the very truths we need to hear the most? It's this wild, ancient battle that's been going on forever.
And Winston Churchill, wow, he just nails it with this quote. Truth itself, it's incontrovertible. It just is. But our reaction to it? Whoa, that's where things get messy, right? This quote is the perfect setup for what we're diving into today. This constant, fierce battle we all seem to have with truth itself.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll kick things off with this historical war against truth. Then look at a pretty wild case study where everything gets turned upside down. After that, we'll dig into the why. Why do we resist so much? And we'll wrap up by comparing the truths that make us feel good versus the ones that, well, demand we change.
Okay, first up, the war against truth. Let's get into why speaking the truth has historically been, a pretty risky business.
If you look back through history, there's this really clear pattern. It's almost like a rule. Whenever someone speaks a profound truth, this powerful opposition just rises up to crush it. And the people who dare to speak that truth, the prophets, the reformers, you name it, they almost always face a push to be silenced. It's a theme that just keeps showing up again and again in our story.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's zoom in on a really powerful case study. It comes from the gospel narrative, and it's a perfect example of this exact dynamic at play. So the stage is set for this huge confrontation. We have Jesus, his identity is being directly challenged, and his opponents, they hit him with a very specific, very serious accusation.
And there it is. That's the core accusation. You, a man, are making yourself God. And what's so interesting is that, on the surface, it sounds like a totally reasonable objection, doesn't it? I mean, from their point of view, some guy claiming to be God? That's not just impossible, it's blasphemous.
But this is the exact moment where the whole story just flips. What if they were looking at it from the completely wrong direction? What if the reality was actually the total inverse of what they thought?
This is so fascinating because it completely reframes the whole conflict. You've got the accusation on one side, a man trying to be God. That's all about human pride, right? But the reality presented in the story is the complete opposite. It's God choosing to become a man, an act of humility. See the difference? It's not about human arrogance. It's about a divine choice.
And that single shift in perspective, that's the whole ballgame. It's not a story about a man reaching up. It's a story about God reaching down. And once you accept that as even a possibility, it changes absolutely everything about how you see the rest of the story.
Okay, so this brings up a huge question, right? These people, they saw amazing things. They heard the teachings. The evidence was right in front of their faces. So why didn't they believe? Why wasn't all that proof enough?
So why would you refuse a truth that's staring you in the face? The problem wasn't a lack of evidence. It wasn't an issue with their eyes or their ears. The problem was way deeper. It was a problem of the heart.
And here's the breakdown of why. Their disbelief, it wasn't about intellect. It wasn't that they couldn't understand. It was emotional, it was personal. Their hearts were hardened by their own pride, by their ambition. But here's the real kicker. They felt threatened because they knew that if they accepted this truth, it would demand a radical change. They would have to change everything about how they lived.
Okay, so let's bring this into our world. How does this ancient problem show up today? The source gives us a really simple, super relatable analogy that I think we can all get.
So picture this, a guy who's a heavy smoker, and he makes a point to never read any articles about how dangerous smoking is. Now, why would he do that? It's not because he thinks the articles are fake, it's because he knows they're true. And that truth is a direct threat to a habit he just isn't ready to give up. He's choosing to stay ignorant just to protect his own comfort zone.
And that's the core distinction, right there. There are two kinds of truth. First, you have the truths that comfort us. They're easy, they fit what we already believe, they don't ask us to do anything. Then, you have the truths that convert us. These are the tough ones. They challenge us, they mess with our lives, and they demand we change. And let's be honest, we're almost always drawn to the first kind, and we tend to sprint away from the second.
So, this all leads to the big takeaway of this whole explainer. The real challenge in life isn't just about finding the truth. It's about having the guts to actually face it, especially when it makes us uncomfortable. It's about letting that truth change us, transform us, not just sit in our heads as another piece of information.
And that's where we'll leave it, with a simple, but maybe not so simple, question for you to think about. What truth are you avoiding? What's that one thing, big or small, that you might be dodging, just because you know that if you really accepted it, you'd have to change.